Welcome to the Black Girls Heal podcast, where we talk about changing unavailable relationship patterns, healing unresolved trauma, and building a healthy relationship with first you and then others. Every episode, we will talk about actionable advice that you can apply today to break unhealthy patterns and grow your self-worth. I'm Sheena Tubbs. Let's begin. Hello, and welcome to the latest episode of Black Girls Heal. So if you are listening to this real time, it is the week of Thanksgiving in 2019. And my hope is that this week is full of happiness, is full of joy, is full of chosen family and time with your real family, and that you are able to have positive, happy moments with the people around you. And also, I know that this is a time where there can be lots of triggers from family, from otherwise, from reminders of just things that have happened around the holidays. And so with that, today's episode is all about boundary hangovers. So this is, what I mean by this is the feeling of guilt or sadness or frustration or shame that you have or that you can have when you set boundaries with someone. This is especially prevalent for those of us who are just beginning our self-healing journey, and even for those of us who are, I've talked about before how our healing process is ongoing, and we may find that we start to master boundaries with some groups and not have any guilt, and then we find that there are other people that trigger a different type of fear or sadness or anxiety in us. And so that is our next step. And so I just want to say that clearly for anyone who has ever felt that way. Why can I do it with these people but not with these people? It's okay. It's just more things for you to heal, and you will get there just like you got there before. This topic was actually picked by ladies in our free Facebook group. I had two topics and I was like, which one do you want to be our topic for next week? And did a poll, and they voted, and this is what was chosen. And so if you haven't joined our free Facebook group, I have discussion questions there. I have guided conversations about the topics that we have here, and just an ability to connect with other women who are also on a healing journey regarding improving their self-worth and breaking the cycles of unhealthy relationships, or both. You can join that free group by going to blackgirlsheal.org/group. Also, if you're listening to this real time, with it being Thanksgiving weekend, that means it is shopping time. That means it is when a lot of us are getting our coins ready to spend on other people, to get some of those deals, to get a new TV. And while you are taking care of other people, I want to encourage you to take care of yourselves. And so, as I've mentioned in a few other episodes, this week for Black Friday, I am selling a portion of our main coaching program, the part that is all about how to finally break ties with someone who you are in an addictive, unhealthy relationship with, how to get through those trauma bonds, how to actually do a no contact detox where you don't end up contacting them and being back in the same place a few months later. How to find someone who is a healthy partner and change your magnet, how to date in a healthy way without letting your fear of abandonment, your fear of rejection get in a way where you are immediately attaching to someone too quickly, falling in love, sharing all of your business on the first or second date. As I talked about in our false intimacy episode, a couple of weeks ago, I'm spilling all of the tea, and I'm giving it to those of you who are like, I just need to know how to date. I need to know how to not answer those, hey, big head texts, because what those are, they're like bombs, right? Like I've noticed, both of my clients and back in the day with my own experience, is what happens with those things when you have a trauma bond with someone is you don't respond to it. Some of us get very proud because we're like, well, I'm not responding to that. And maybe you don't, but it plants a seed. And a few days later, right, you're like, let me just see what's going on their social media. Or maybe you decide to respond to tell them how you feel and get very self-righteous about it. And all that communication does is just reopen the door and you're right back in the same place. And as I've talked about before, all of this stuff is just related to our unresolved trauma. And so what I really love about the Date Better, Love Better bundle that I'm giving you is it respects that. It's not like a lot of other dating advice is just like, do this and do that, and not acknowledging that this stuff goes deep. You don't have relationship issues because you want to, because you like it. You're trying, right? And then in addition to that bundle, you get a full day with me, virtually, of course, because not everybody is here in Houston, where I'm walking you through every part of this content. We are creating all of your plans together. I'm answering all of your questions, and we are going to have 2020 be the year that you do things differently. Because it is the holidays, it is a low price, but even past that, I have payment plans to make it even lower and more accessible, because we all got lists. So with all that said, to get on that deal, you can go to blackgirlsheal.org/dating and you can pick it up and get started immediately. And you have access to the materials forever and ever and ever. And then your question and answer portion is fulfilled via the online workshop. So let's get into boundaries. On December 3rd is when the Healed and Loved Woman will be opening its doors. And this is a year-long journey where I'm going to be walking a group of women through the process of healing your unresolved childhood trauma and all of the things that come along with it. So the self-doubt, the imposter syndrome, the difficulty saying no to others, the perfectionism, the feeling not enough, the low self-worth, the disconnection from your body, not being connected to your emotions, not knowing how to express your emotions. It's all going to be there, and we're going into it slowly and lovingly for a year. And boundaries, knowing what your boundaries are and being able to communicate what your boundaries are is such a big deal that we're spending literally 2 months on them in the program. Of course, we can talk about it throughout the year, but we're spending 2 months where the lessons are specifically about boundaries. And so one of the things that happens as you are getting healthy and as you're setting boundaries is you may be clear on what they are, but that doesn't mean that it gets easier necessarily. If anything, it can be very painful. And that is when you have a boundary hangover. And so you get up the courage, you get up the wherewithal, the clarity, the insight to tell someone no, or to tell someone how you feel, or to set standards and expectations in the relationship. And let's say you're even able to say it clearly. Let's say they even receive it well, whether or not they liked it or not, they listened and they started to implement what you asked of them, or they respected it. But when you walk away, you feel this overwhelming sense of shame, of guilt, of sadness, of fear, of wanting to take it back, of questioning, of self-doubt. And it's like, why do I feel this way? Right? And you can become frustrated with yourself for having this mix of emotions, this frustration and shame that you should be strong enough, that you shouldn't care. And also this sadness that you can't really enjoy the boundaries that you just set, right? You were able to finally verbalize and express what you needed. And the idea and the hope is that you will have some relief on the other side. And that's not what you feel. You just feel more pain, but in a different way. And so some of us will go back and take back the boundaries. And I'm going to tell you why we do that in a little bit. And some of us will press on, but we'll have that lingering, ongoing feeling of dread because of it. So why do we feel this shame and guilt? We feel the shame and guilt because we were taught that our feelings, our thoughts, and our opinions either did not matter, or they were too big, or they were unreasonable, or they were unfair, that they were wrong, that they were not needed, that they were silly and foolish and childish, immature, stupid, whatever it was that our caretakers or family of origin or guardians, whoever it was in powers of authority around us, even teachers. We spend a lot of time in our school system, in our schools, more time actually than with more waking time with our teachers than our parents, at different points of our life, depending on what type of school we went to. So these are also people who are instrumental in developing how we see ourselves and our place in the world. And so we have had that message, especially on a recurring basis. I've talked about complex PTSD, ongoing chronic relational childhood trauma, which is what results in complex PTSD. That's where we can have all these feelings, all these emotions, and not necessarily know what they started from. We know that we feel it, but unlike when people may be in a car accident or be in war or have a huge traumatic incident, we just feel like we've always felt this way. And especially when these things happen young, it feels like it is intertwined in how we see ourselves and see the world. And it takes a lot of unraveling. So the first thing that you do, or that you can do, as far as taking away the power of the boundary hangover, is to remind yourself and remember that these feelings that you are feeling are not your own, in the aspect of that they were given to you by parents, caregivers, teachers, authority figures, whatever powers that be. So these were feelings and thoughts that other people put on you because they could not handle your feelings and emotions, and not because they were bad, but because they had their own issues. It is perfectly okay for a child to say, please don't do that to me. That hurts. Whether it's emotional hurt or whether it's mental trauma and intelligence trauma, which looks like them calling you stupid or challenging how you see the world, and then you start to doubt yourself. It's okay and it's appropriate for you to say, please listen to me, please hear me. Of course, physically, your body, your mind, your emotions, your space are all valuable. Every single part of you. There's not one part of you that is too much. Especially as Black women, it starts in early childhood, and there's a lot of, at the time of this recording, there's a few viral articles about what is her name? Let me see. Monique Morris. There's a lot of articles and thought pieces about Monique Morris, her book Push Out, and the criminalization of what happens to Black girls in school. We're seen as older than we are treated differently, we are more likely to be punished, we are more likely to be excluded and isolated and shamed by our teachers, by the system. We are more likely to be told that we are loud and too much, and not seen as the precious children and souls that we are. And it's really tragic, and it's really unfair. And unfortunately, this doesn't just happen with white teachers. This happens and can happen across the board because of how racism and systemic oppression can and does infiltrate all of our thoughts and how we relate to each other. Subconsciously, of course, unless we are aware of, why do I think this about this person? Why do I believe this? Why am I acting this way? And so as children, we can be on the receiving end of that. We can be on the receiving end of being told that we're too loud, too ghetto, too big, too much, which also can equate to some shame. But again, none of these things are true. They feel so true. And me saying this to you logically can be like, that's great, but I don't believe it. And that's fine. But me saying it first at all is a seed. Just like the seeds I talked about with trauma bonds, this is a seed that will grow. And I will continue to say, and hopefully other people who are part of your healing team will continue to say to you until it starts to sound like it could be true. And then until you can actually believe it to be true, right? So one of the things that I'm going to teach you in the Healed and Loved Woman, there's actually like a whole like mini library of skills that you can use to help you manage your emotions. And one of the skills is called Check the Facts. This is taken from DBT therapy. And what Check the Facts is exactly what it sounds like. Knowing that your feelings are not facts, and looking at what are the facts of the situation and do the facts match what I'm feeling. Because sometimes we can get so caught up in our emotional mind that we find it hard to use our wisdom. So, what this would look like is I set boundaries with someone. I'm feeling all this guilt and shame. And by the way, you feel guilt and or shame when you feel like you have done something bad or that you are bad. So we're going to check the facts to see if you've done something bad and if you are bad. So have I done something bad? Me telling them to please show up on time when we have meetings. Is that bad? And I don't answer me about how you feel about it. What is bad? Let's check the facts. If they are on time, then we can get more things done. Then we can leave on time. Then we can start the meeting and be able to take better notes. We can finish all of our projects, hopefully with time to spare, which gives us more time for our families and other errands that we have to run. So you setting boundaries is not bad. It does not hurt the other person. If anything, it helps them. So then the next thing is, I feel bad, like I shouldn't have used my voice. For this, sometimes I tell people it's helpful for you to kind of think, well, what would you tell another friend? If you had a friend who said, I told this person I didn't like that they were late and I feel like I shouldn't have said that, you'd probably be like, girl, they shouldn't have been late in the first place. That would probably trigger a very strong reaction from you that is disrespectful. And you are deserving of the same reaction. Okay? So I guess that's the second step to, after you acknowledge where it came from, to check the facts. And the third thing is to remind yourself that your feelings are valid, that your need and your space is valid. So this is where the friend advice is kind of getting into, right? If you need to externalize it and imagine what would you say to somebody else, you probably tell them that what they need and what they feel matters. And so this is your chance, your turn to say it matters for you as well. There's another skill that I teach in the program called opposite action. And when you want to do the opposite action of guilt is when you do, is exactly what it sounds like. So instead of me feeding into the guilt, I do the opposite action of guilt. And the opposite action of guilt is for you to take ownership of your body. So notice how you feel when you feel guilty. You may tend to look down. You may tend to cower, to make yourself smaller, to become more rigid and fidgety. The opposite action of guilt, and this is where you get into your body, because the only way for us to heal our trauma is to include our body. There's more and more research about it. I'm currently learning more about it, and that's why I'm so excited to share it with y'all here on the podcast and in other places where I coach as well. And of course, with my clients here in Houston, my face-to-face clients here in Houston. But by integrating your body, what you would do is, instead of you cowering, looking down, you look up, back straight, enunciate, look directly in the person's eyes. And even if you feel like your body is shaking, you do it, because your body will communicate a change to your brain and a change in your feelings. So those are really great ways for you to get started. In the program, I'm going to talk more with students about how to self-soothe and how to actually comfort yourself more when you're in this bad place versus, or in addition to doing opposite action and checking the facts. Those are really great places to start, but to give the more holistic view of that, which I do not want to spend an hour podcast going into. And also I want to be able to coach you through it. So for those of you who join the Healed and Loved Woman, I look forward to doing that with you. But even if you don't, that special bonus I was talking about before, for those of you who get our Black Friday program, the Date Better, Love Better workshop, if you are one of the ladies who pay in full, I have a special workbook called the Better Boundaries workbook that I'll be giving to you. So I hope that is helpful to give you a good start, especially now during the holidays. There may be a lot of people, or maybe just a few people. That's another thing. Sometimes what we can do is we can exaggerate what is actually going on, which is not the facts, because we are so caught up in our pain and our fear. And we've given people We've given people, the best word is power. We've given people more power over our lives than they need to. So here's an example. Whenever people say everybody in my family is crazy and has no boundaries, and then I say, okay, well, then who are those people? Name them. And then when it comes down to it, in a family of 60 plus people, it's just one uncle and one cousin, right? Or just one uncle. But because they have so much focus and so much attention on that one person, they it's easier, or their body automatically labels the family as dangerous and the family as having bad boundaries, when really it's just these one or two people. And so you spend your whole holiday, you spend all your time focused on how to avoid your family, instead of you going to that auntie that is really sweet and you spending your time with her and ignoring Uncle Leroy, right? Just knowing that is who he is. That is what's going on. I will be prepared to set boundaries if I need to, but I'm going to be in places of love, comfort, and compassion, right? You can use that same mindset when it comes to friendships. You know, I can't trust any women, whatever. Okay. So every woman that's in your phone book as a potential friend, all of them are just vindictive, and, you know, you can't trust them, and they backstab, all of them. Well, no. Okay, well then tell me the names. Instead of us going through each one, tell me the names of the women who are. And same thing, out of all the women in your phone book, it's really just one or two. And it's like, and granted, these might have been really true traumatic incidents, but it's not every woman. And so you are stopping yourself from having deep personal friendships. You know, I sent an email to the ladies who are on the Healed and Loved Woman wait list, because racial trauma is something that I want to cover. I've tried to cover it before, and I just realized I'm not an expert in it. I hope to be one day, but it's definitely an area that I am still learning and growing in myself. And so I asked the women who were on the wait list what about racial trauma if they experienced it, and if so, what they would like to learn about it, so that I can bring in experts who are to help guide them over this year in this healing process. And what I can say about this is I have worked with a lot of Black women going back to our learned prejudices. A lot of Black women who have fear and anxiety connecting to other Black people / Black women, depending on what your personal background is. And it could be some of us who grew up in very white environments or neighborhoods. Well, no, that's usually what it is. And either not having a lot of access to other Black people, or if you did have access to it, there was some bullying that was going on. You're not Black enough, you're Oreo. And again, some real legitimate relational trauma, and how that is manifested. And us as now adult Black women is a difficulty in attaching to other Black people, right? And then also the shame of, like, you can't really talk about it, because if you do, then it's like, well, what's wrong with you? And so with all that said, you know, this is another example of, if you have anxiety and fear about connecting to other Black people, if this is you, if this is part of your story, and you're on this healing journey to reconnect to yourself and to other people that look like you, then it's thinking, okay, who is it? Every Black person that I know. And sometimes it's better to start with the names of who it actually is, and then listing out the names of who it is not, and getting clear and checking the facts. You know, our trauma does a really great job of confusing us, of painting a reality that's not true, because remember, all of our coping mechanisms are exactly that. They are designed to protect us, to defend us from danger. And if you growing up had a lot of bullying and a lot of isolation from people that looked like you, or a couple people that looked like you, either one, it could be very much like, or a group-wide isolation. I don't want to invalidate anybody's experience, but this could definitely be something that you need to unlearn and detach from. And so that's part of what we will be doing together in the Healed and Loved Woman. And if you don't join us, you got a good first step. So that is it for this episode. Under 30 minutes this week. Pat on the back for me, so that you can go and enjoy your turkey if you're a turkey eater, or your jackfruit entree if you're one of my vegan sisters, or your Chinese food if you don't celebrate Thanksgiving, or don't plan to go anywhere and just are eating at home. That is one of my favorite things to get whenever I am not celebrating with other people on the holidays. It's like my own little mini tradition. Whatever you are doing this week, take care of yourselves. Um, Go and get that Date Better, Love Better bundle. It is truly an amazing deal. And so the website for that is blackgirlsheal.org/dating. And by the time you listen to this episode next week, the doors to the Healed and Loved Woman will be open, and you can go and enroll at thehealedandlovedwoman.com. You who are on the wait list, though, you are getting a very special gift that no one else is getting. So if you go there now to join the wait list, you will have access to that special surprise. So that's it. Take care of yourselves. Sending you all love.